medicine and the practice of medicine is changing very rapidly. The system, AI, technology, it's not the way that it used to be. And there are sometimes concerns about how the changes are affecting the connection with patients, especially.
Welcome to Behind Beliefs, Behaviors, and the Brain, your communication podcast, where we bring brain science and communication strategy together to transform how we lead, connect, and thrive. I am your host, Dr. Maisha Claiborne, mom, physician, coach, consultant, and lover of all things brain and behavior. I also happen to be a trained expert in cultivating trust and safety through trauma-informed communication. Now, you may be wondering, what the heck does that mean? No worries. On this podcast, you will come to understand it all. Together each Monday, we will explore and uncover what drives our beliefs, shapes our behaviors, and influences our communication, from individual relationships to organizational culture. Each week, we dive into the science behind trust and safety, relating, communicating, and breaking through limiting beliefs that hold us back. So listen up, because whether you're a leader, a parent, a spouse, or just some amazing individual trying to get the tips for operating in your highest self, on this podcast, you will learn how to harness the power of the brain to create real change in your relationships, your leadership, and your life. Tune in every Monday morning, and remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now let's dive in and start reshaping communication from the inside out. It's time to transform, one conversation at a time.
Welcome back to another episode. I am so grateful to be here as always with you all, because you all know without the listeners, there is no podcast. And one of the other things that I really love, and I may or may not have said this many times before on my podcast, is that I love doing these podcasts and getting to converse with my guests, because I get to meet amazing people. And so today I'm very excited to have this amazing doctor with me. And I have to tell you, we sit on the board of this amazing nonprofit together. But during our first meeting, when she began to talk about what she does, and we're going to get into that in a moment, I immediately ran to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is how I connect with my fellow colleagues and professionals and leaders. I ran to LinkedIn and looked up her name, and voila, we were already connected. So it really was sort of divine order that we had a really great conversation after that. And I was like, you must come on the podcast. So Dr. Nondumiso is here with me, and she is the owner of Ubuntu Doctor Coaching. And if you're wondering, what is Ubuntu? Well, guess what? We're going to talk about that today. I can't spoil the fun for you. We're going to unpack it and unlayer it. But she is an amazing leadership and executive coach. One of the things that really drew me into her is some of the similarities in our thought and the way we think, and to bring in the culture, to bring in the old ways, to bring in the roots of sort of how I think, and to recognize the similarities and where it comes from, really opened my heart. So it is a pleasure to introduce Dr. Nondumiso here on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for weeks to be having you, because I just know the conversation is going to be deep and profound, and I'm very sure that the audience will benefit from it. So I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for giving me the platform.
Oh man, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. So I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit. So I'd love if you just sort of share what you do, kind of share your story, like how you got to where you are and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm South African by birth. I trained as a medical doctor, qualified in South Africa, and spent the last 25 years professionally as a doctor, working in many different sectors. In private practice, in South Africa, it would be the equivalent of family practice, as a general practitioner, solo practice, group practice. I also pivoted at a time to the nonprofit sector, working with many organizations there. Something that I really love because nonprofit organizations are really driven by mission. So I was able to align with with the needs, with my personal needs, but also serve i- mainly in the HIV sector, HIV prevention. And I also spent some time in corporate, in a pharmaceutical company, in clinical research. So I've dabbled all across different areas. So that's been wonderful for me. I've made many friends along the way, colleagues. I've had the opportunity, as you know, as doctors, to this is what we are about serving patients, So I'm really grateful that I've always, for the most part, been in my purpose professionally. I'm a wife, I'm a mother of two grown boys as well. And yeah, and recently relocated to the United States, which has also given me just a different perspective, about healthcare, a different perspective about the medical community, and actually how we are more similar than we are different. So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey being a doctor, and yeah, excited to unpack, all the lessons that I've learned along the way.
Well, tell me, this is, of course, I know the audience wants to know. Tell me a little bit about the name of your business. Tell me a little bit about Ubuntu Doctor Coaching, and start to like unpack the layers of that just a little bit.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you that it was I sat and I did research or some other explanation other than just the name came to me. I
Mhm.
think for me it wasn't clear why the name just came to me, when I wanted to register a company. But I think you talked about divine intervention earlier. And I think that is exactly what happened because, along the journey, I have suddenly found so many mentors who were even deeper in coaching, specifically around Ubuntu and applying the Ubuntu philosophy. So I do remember very clearly shortly after registering my company, and I started, as I was putting together all my documents and how I'm going to do it, I just stumbled on a coach, a very senior coach who's now my mentor, who had written a book about Ubuntu. And I reached out to him, and, he accepted the mentorship. We built a wonderful relationship. He showed me other Ubuntu practitioners. And that also led to me being something that I'm very proud of. I'm not a braggadocious person, but I do share this. That I was the first doctor to be certified in Ubuntu coaching
Wow.
through the people that I have met. And I didn't know when I started the company, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as Ubuntu coaching. But
Mhm.
as I said, sometimes things happen because they're meant to happen that way, and the divine intervention just opens up doors for you. The universe opens up doors for you.
That's right.
You meet people who will support you. You meet people for whom the whole concept of Ubuntu finds a home.
Yes.
For whom they get excited when they hear about it. So yeah, I wish there was another story, but it just happened. The name just came to my into my head, and that's how it is. Of course, I did understand the concept of Ubuntu. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it just made sense at the time that that's the name that I would come up with.
I love that. Talk about divine intervention, right? I think that we get these downloads from,
Mhm.
higher power, the universe, whatever, people want to call them. And when we listen, we find that there's a resonance with that, you know? And so it sounds like, feels like that's kind of what happened. Like you got a download, this name came to you, And then here we are some years later, and it is the essence of what you do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you say, if you're vibrating and your intention and your heart is in the right place, for me, that has been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just voice work. It's just so easy. Your vision becomes clear very quickly. It's just less effort. There's less effort that you have to apply. But I do believe, like you said, it's about being in the right frame of mind, having the right intention, having a pure heart about what you want to do, and the downloads will happen very quickly.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. I mean, let's talk about Ubuntu and the practice of Ubuntu and what that means. Just enlighten us.
Yeah. So Ubuntu is a Nguni word. There, within Africans, you have different and Bantu are one of the groupings found mostly in East and Southern Africa, but predominantly Southern Africa is Bantu. And being a South African, I fall under the group of, and then in South Africa, within the Bantu, we further divide into the Nguni people, and you also have I would say, the Sotho groups, which is Tswana, and the people we also have the Tswana people in South Africa. So in Nguni languages, humanity is Ubuntu. That's what when you talk about humanity, that's literally the direct translation and meaning of Ubuntu is humanity. So that's sort of like the noun. Was it a noun or adjective? Or maybe all of the above. My English is not good to describe it because I think it can be a state of being, it can be an action, it can be a mindset. I think it finds expression in so many different ways. But yes, Ubuntu, it really refers to humanity. When I say Maisha has Ubuntu, the concept, is in itself says that she has a sense of humanity. Now, I shared with you earlier as well that I am Zulu speaking, which is one of the Nguni groups within the Bantu group.
Yeah.
When we greet, we say Sawubona, Sawubona, and that means I see you. That's how we greet each other, and then you would return the same to me. If I hold you in very high esteem, or if maybe you're an elder, you say Sanbonani. Sanbonani means I see you in the plural, meaning I see you. And this gets a little bit more conceptual. I see you and everybody that walks with you, if that makes sense. So,
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
ancestors.
ancestors too. So that's how you would greet an elder. You'd say Sanbonani because it's an acknowledgement that you are not, in this world as one person. You are also a function of everybody that has come before you. So who you are, and hopefully in good health, means that it's because of people that have come before you. So Ubuntu is really, that's the core of it, is acknowledging that my humanity as an individual is a function of your humanity. Your humanity affirms me as a human being. And that dictates then how we interact with each other. So that's sort of like a high level way of discussing, of thinking about it. But I've also seen, many, again, some of these concepts, when you translate them into English, they don't quite carry. That's why they need some explanation. But one of the ways that people talk about Ubuntu is I am because you are. So again, just
I love that.
affirming that as I rise, as I grow, as whatever is good about me is because of what is good about you, and vice versa. So that then gives us the responsibility to affirm each other And that when I rise, it means that I should ensure that you are also rising and reciprocate that amongst each other. So that's in essence which also calls on our connectedness. It acknowledges our connectedness. I have spoken to people, and the more I also read, I've come to appreciate that maybe it sounds novel, but it maybe not as novel as people might think. In that, if you're a Christian, you will know that the Bible does call on us to love each other as we love ourselves, so it's aligned to that. If you are somebody that understands the universal laws, there's the universal law of oneness that talks about our interconnectedness.
That's right.
Yes. So it's not, and I'd like to believe that the more I read about it, the more I understand it, I actually see that it's just the African way of interpreting it, but it's actually it's ancient knowledge, it's inherent knowledge that we know that we have neglected. Yeah.
I was just going to say that it's that ancient knowledge, that old wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what happens is this ancient knowledge gets learned and passed down and sometimes recycled and sometimes rebranded, right, into different ways of expressing. And so it's everything that you said. I mean, it still gives me chills all over again, like the I am because you are. And it's interesting because I think when we were chatting, I was remembering where I had heard that before was Trevor Noah, because he was acknowledging, I believe it was in a set where he was acknowledging Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, we have this saying, I am because you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's such a beautiful thing that calls on that connection and that greeting, Salbano, I see you. Or Salbani, I see you and all that walk with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if we actually interacted with each other in that way on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives me chills, but it also makes me a little sad in the moments, like in this current paradigm, because we don't, as a culture, at least as a culture here in the United States and a lot across the world, like worldwide, we're seeing this sort of breakdown of this humanity, this absence of empathy, and this disconnection from each other. And so it's interesting. Wow, I didn't realize I would feel so emotional about this, right? I think because understanding the depth of the principle of Ubuntu and of Salbana, recognizing the light has you also see the darkness sometimes. And so it makes it loud that that's really what's happening, is that we don't see each other. And we all want to be seen and heard and respected and valued and welcomed. And how seemingly, and I'm saying seemingly on purpose, like how seemingly simple it is to to be seen by seeing one another. Easily said, but not done, right? Because there's a lot of trauma underneath there. There's a lot of positional, standing in one's beliefs. And so it just has me very present to the importance of this type of work, very present to the essentialness of this work. And you and I do very, like our work is crossover work in a lot of ways. I think the depth at which you approach it is, and especially adding, I think, well, I don't know if this is, you'll tell me, it feels like there's a spiritual component that gets added in, right? Whereas, like a lot of the work that I do is more very, very it's a mind oriented, mind and body, like the mind body intelligence. But what you do is the same thing, except for you bring that it's ancient knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's ancient knowledge.
Here's where it's really going to blow your mind. We talk about the spiritual component of it. I mentioned that I underwent the Ubuntu coaching.
Mhm.
If I tell you that Nobantu, who's the coach that she's an accredited coach and who came up with Ubuntu coaching,
Mhm.
got the concept of Ubuntu coaching in a dream, then you you understand just how powerful it is. And I suppose sometimes we do need to be open to that, But she said she received it in a dream, and the mantra that goes with it was also in a dream. She said she just woke up one morning after dreaming about ancestors, and wow, she had the idea.
Mhm.
Everything just fell into place,
Yeah.
and she was able to start the training. And for me, I do agree with you that there's certainly a spiritual part of it, because I think it is inherent, but it also, I think, working with physicians, somehow I think that it makes sense to them. It's not a hard sell at all.
Yes.
It aligns with so many people's purpose and faith.
Mhm.
And I do believe, and I've had conversations with this with a friend about how intuitive physicians are.
Yes, absolutely. And they forget.
They forget.
Forget that. Yes. And I think that what you do, and I apologize, I interrupted you. I just what you do calls to people because we want that. We want that to be seen. And people and especially physicians can't always put a word on it,
Mhm,
but then but there's an energy to it.
mhm,
And
mhm,
in our industry, people get a little bit like eye rolly and about energy and things like that. Oh, it's woo woo. But it's not.
mhm,
It's not at all. And it presupposes multiple intelligences.
mhm, mhm. For sure, for sure. I think, again, for me, I consider it such a privilege to work with physicians, because despite the challenges, as I said earlier, I've worked with doctors from South Africa. I worked with doctors actually across many countries in Africa and also in the US. And I realized that we have a lot of challenges. I think, the medicine and the practice of medicine is changing very rapidly. The system, the AI technology and all of that, it's not the way that it used to be. And there are sometimes concerns about how the changes are affecting the connection with patients, especially, and leading through all these changes with empathy, with courage, with compassion is very challenging for doctors. But I still feel like the doctors are open to it because they can easily see how it can apply in their own situation. I've had feedback from doctors who, just by having Ubuntu top of mind, have said to me, I had such an amazing conversation with the patient just by asking the patient to contribute to the treatment plan. What do you think? What's the best way that we can do this?
Wow.
One of the principles of Ubuntu, which is co-creation. And the colleagues said, I was a bit skeptical, but the ideas that came from the patient are even better than what I would have come up with myself, just by us. And one thing I took away from that was also key. She said it didn't take more time than I thought I thought maybe if I asked them that they're gonna, no, it didn't take more
Mm.
time. We're working under this pressure. We have to see patients within a certain period of time. So it worked for her. So she was sold already, but just by taking that leap of faith and saying, let me co-create with the patient, and the patient feels seen and heard in their treatment, in their health, they felt empowered, because they contributed to it and they owned the treatment plan. Now it's on them now.
That's right.
So to your point, adopting these strategies is not foreign to us as doctors. It's just perhaps we've lost focus, or maybe it shifted away because of all the challenges in the system. But we have it, we understand it, and we know the power of connectedness when it comes to patients, at least.
Yeah, one of the things that occurs to me also about this work is how valuable it is for leaders and for teams and organizations. Because especially now, again, we're in a time where there's such uncertainty, such extreme division of thought, like very much us and them thinking. I call it binary thinking, right? Like either or, us or them, right or wrong, valid, invalid. Like there's no sort of yes and or collaborative or, like you said, let me understand you, let me see your point of view, right? And so this concept of seeing people, right, of I am because you are, of appreciating the humanity of another, is so important of a principle to bring into organizations. It's, in the corporate terms, it's belongingness,
Mhm.
it's inclusiveness, right? It's that.
Mhm.
And it is ancient knowledge and old principle. It's really basic human principle that if has been passed down for generations and now has been lost, kind of thing.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think for me, you're absolutely right about the utility of Ubuntu in leadership. And I'm speaking as somebody who has held leadership roles before with teams, and recently gave a talk about leadership mistakes, right? Many of which I made. We make them out of ignorance. We
Yeah,
make,
absolutely.
as a coach, I'm sure you know sometimes our medical training doesn't quite prepare us adequately for leadership roles,
That's right.
you know. But I do believe many of the mistakes that I made, and I'll call them mistakes for want of a better word, but challenges that other doctors face also in leadership. Ubuntu can really heighten your awareness to them if you are mindful of the principles of Ubuntu. So I've been very fortunate for the most part in my career to have had amazing leaders, to have been led by amazing leaders, mostly women leaders, and mostly people who maybe they were not mindful of it or didn't describe it as Ubuntu, but who were really leading in Ubuntu. So I have examples that are very close to me of how they have demonstrated all these principles in their leadership. And interestingly, of different races too. So not just, African, not even just South African, but because I worked with many international organizations. So, but they demonstrated, and I can pull on different elements, that stuck with me based on the principle that they showed. So it is challenging, but I agree with you that leadership, this is my personal view, that leadership does not have to be a winner takes all. I think that's one way of thinking about it. I'm reminded of somebody who talked about democracy in Africa. It's challenging because African systems are not winner takes all. African systems are about negotiation and us finding and getting to a win-win, agreement. And that's, for me, I think, is how leadership is. When I rise as a leader, it should be that other people are also benefiting from my leadership, right? In their own way, according to their own needs and according to their own gifts. Because everybody has a gift, everybody has a gift that can actually help to elevate your leadership skills. But when if you have a different approach to leadership that doesn't recognize that even an intern or a student can teach you something,
Yeah.
that you can learn something from them that will empower you as a leader, then you actually deprive yourself of the joy of leadership. Because I think there is something quite fulfilling about leadership, about having a vision and being able to influence people, around your vision. So you deprive yourself of that. I mean, an example I can give you is I do pro bono mentoring of medical students. And I was really struggling. I was really struggling with them. I want to be honest, because they were not really responding to my emails. And, I just felt that, what. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask them, you guys, are you really interested in, being mentored? And the suggestion came from them. They said, we don't like emails so much. We're going to form a WhatsApp group, and it will be easier for you to communicate with us there. And it was just that quick. It was just that simple. And it was just a matter of being aware of, one, that they actually have the ideas. They know how they want to be mentored should also serve them. It was not about me and what my needs and what I think should happen. It was meeting them where their needs are and recognizing that and letting them lead. So they formed the group themselves. They determine, how they communicate and so forth. So again, that's just an example that I see. It's a small example, but I've had so many different experiences in leadership where I've learned similar lessons. I had a very powerful and dynamic leader. It was based in West Africa, who taught me so much about the concept of co-creation. you know she would delegate according to my strength. She would delegate to the team. She would make sure that whatever output came from the team, most of it we were doing, a lot of it, and growing in the.
Mm-hmm.
But she never took credit for that. She was not taking credit for it.
Right.
As she was getting the recognition for her team, it was evident and obvious to everybody that this was the team. So and so contributed this, and so contributed that. And I felt seen because I could add value based on where my passion lies, based on what my strength is, and other people too. So Ubuntu lends itself very, very well to leadership and to collaborative leadership.
I love that. And there's so much in what you said, like especially there were two things that stood out, which is one is letting, like, the medical students, right? You there was a simple solution and you let them lead and you allow them to set the group up. Right? There's a lot of micromanaging that happens in our society. And then with your leader who delegated according to your strengths. That is, those two things just in and itself, that's like the whole show. Like
Mhm.
in terms of leadership, that is so key. This principle of Ubuntu allows for the expansion of that intelligence to be able to do that. Like, and it's seeing people and appreciating the strengths of people. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? So I really love that. Now, I have a question because, I am very aware that there is a lot of there can be a lot of preconceived notions or bias. And I wonder what you say to leaders who might have a little resistance to this work, maybe because of where it comes from, or maybe they see the name. People see my name Maisha and they're like, oh, okay, we know who she is. So people jump to conclusions, and when people jump to conclusions, they miss the value. So I wonder if you've encountered resistance, and if you have, what would you say to leaders who may be resisting this work based on not having enough knowledge about its value?
I haven't encountered resistance, possibly because I'm still quite early in my journey.
Yeah.
But in explaining Ubuntu, I have found that it resonates with people very easily. It's not
That's
a
good to
very
hear.
hard sell, yes. In fact, I recently collaborated with another coach. I was a guest on their podcast who's based in India. And he is just also, you know, fascinated by the idea, but also recognizing that actually our society has the same. We might be calling it something else, but Indian society is also set up in that way. So I think it would be difficult for anybody really to reject a universal law, a Christian law. I think you can explain the importance of Ubuntu from so many different perspectives. Even if you called it something else, even if you called it Maisha, it's difficult to reject it once you really understand the value of it. But to your point, to your point, people do have misconceptions. I think something that perhaps might be in my head and might have been a concern was the way people perceive Africa and anything that comes from Africa as not really being valid or important or relevant. So that has been a thought that has crossed my mind initially. But as I said, the more I talk to people in the US, I'm finding that once you explain what it's about, it's like, oh, okay, that really makes sense. I think another barrier might be just how people might not be wanting to let go of a way of working or leading that has served them well. So if it has served me well to be the lone hero, and I perhaps my organization values that, the person that is tough on people, that doesn't that you know that is authoritarian, if that's the workplace culture, then it might be difficult for them to let go of that if that has been rewarded, if in an environment maybe that rewards that, or they maybe even recruited for that. They might face, they might give some resistance. But generally I haven't seen that. Something that I think about more often, and the language that I use more often when it comes to leadership, and again, Ubuntu, I think, forms a big part of it, is thinking about your leadership legacy and what do you want to leave behind.
Love that.
Yeah. So, and maybe because I'm a little bit advanced now, I'm not even a mid-career doctor. you know, when you start looking at retirement in the face.
Oh, I love it.
But you really start having more moments of reflection,
Yeah.
and reflecting on what is my legacy as a doctor, as a physician, what is my legacy as a leader. And I think I probably have achieved quite a few things in terms of, the work that I've done, the programs that I've managed. But I would want for people to, or I'd want for my legacy to be about people and not about necessarily the work that I've done. So the lives that I've touched as a leader, how many leaders did I inspire? How many people
Yeah.
did I empower? And so the more I think about that, the more I see how Ubuntu, for people who really want to define their legacy or their career and think about their legacy, I think Ubuntu lends itself very well to that, because it's not just about, okay, I did these so many cesarean sections, but how many people's lives did you touch that they can think that you've empowered, that they can directly attribute being better people to you and your influence.
I concur. The thought that is just right there in my mind is that I wish that this work, this energy, these principles could propagate and into the minds of the people who need them most, but may be unaware. And I am very aware of the stages of learning, right? There's the blissful ignorance, there's the contemplation stage, which is like you contemplate it, but you're not quite ready for it. You have all of the countering beliefs and thoughts set up and deeply embedded, and that you may even be getting secondary gain from, like societally speaking, organizationally speaking as well. And then so it's like that pre-contemplative and that contemplative and that preparation phase is when people really start to move toward like accepting and absorbing these kinds of ancient ideas and principles, right? And so yeah, I just find myself again a bit emotional, just wishing that and I think part of it is just I'm so connected with you and connected with what you're saying, and it brings me into this place of longing of, when will we learn? How can we get this out? But just really coming back to acknowledging you, right, really, for the work that you're doing, and just being grateful that we can have this conversation, for the conversations that we've had, and really for the realization and gratitude that I have that although it's not, I'm not like formally trained, and it's not what I call it. It's like the work that I do is closer to than I would have imagined the ancient principles and the ancestors, that what they would have wanted for our people in the world. And that makes me very happy and makes me, feel like I'm very much on purpose, and then very grateful to be in partnership with you in that particular way, and in many other ways that we are in partnership. So I appreciate you, and I know I feel like we have so much more to talk about. I feel like there needs to be probably a part two to this podcast, because I feel like I could talk to you and listen to you. You have such a wonderful voice all day.
I can talk all day about Ubuntu, so be careful what you ask for.
That's why I said, we can, we need to have a sit down dinner at some point. We get together in person and just have some food, maybe have some dessert. People say wine, but I say dessert, and and then just talk about and be in the space of it. And I want to have you come back around and have you share, who do you most love to work with, and how can they best find you? How can they best find you to work with you?
Yes. I love working with physicians, from residents to attending in clinical roles and non-clinical roles, as long as they're physicians
Hmm.
anywhere in the world, irrespective of their sex or gender or race.
Yeah.
I just love working with physicians. I I normally would work with physicians who want leadership development,
Hmm.
doctors who maybe already in leadership roles but struggling to get their team together,
Yeah.
to have influence over their team, or doctors who are just wanting to think more strategically, so sort of get out of the weeds. Maybe they're struggling with micromanaging or delegating. So physician leadership development, that's definitely my passion, and executive coaching as well. But I also get a lot of requests for coaching for doctors who want to transition to other areas. So maybe they kind of want to make a decision about what's my next move as a doctor. And I don't really do too much burnout prevention work, but usually that is sort of part of leadership. It always comes out. So I
Absolutely.
if you're doing leadership a certain way, it will be stressful. So that's usually part of the conversation, leadership development. But that I do have some clients who want to kind of focus on that as well. And then they can find me. I can share my email address with you. It's Dr. Nondumiso at Ubuntu Doctor Coaching.com. And they can also find me on social media or LinkedIn, where we work. That's where I spend most of my time. That's my
Yes.
spot is LinkedIn. Just using my name. If they search my name, they would be able to find me there. And also on the website. The website does have more information for individuals as well as organizations that are interested in incorporating, healthcare organizations that are interested in incorporating Ubuntu philosophy into their work. And that's www.ubuntudoctorcoaching.com.
Awesome. We will make sure to have all of these in the show notes for our listeners who may want to reach out to you, to invite you to be a consultant, speaker, a trainer, workshop giver, or who want to work with you personally or one on one. So we'll make sure we have all of that information, my listeners, in the show notes. I want to thank you again, Dr. Nondumiso, for coming on and sharing this wisdom, sharing this philosophy, sharing what you do, sharing yourself with me and with our audience. I appreciate you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and giving me the platform. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You all heard it. You need to check out ubuntudoctorcoaching.com. Again, we'll have all of this information in the show notes, and share this episode. Share this episode with a friend, with a family member, with a colleague. This is philosophy. This is principle. This is an ideology, a concept that really needs to ripple out into community, right? So beyond organizations, beyond corporations, this is community, this is our families, this is our friends, this is returning us to authentic connection, returning us to our empathy, returning us to humanity and the interconnectedness that we are as people. So please share this information with people in your life. And I would be very appreciative if you would leave a review, because we want the people who are coming back behind us to know that the information the things that we're talking about are very meaningful and they're impactful. Sharing and leaving reviews is how we create ripples in this work, how we get the word out about what we're doing here. And so I'm just so appreciative for you helping us to create that ripple and get a word out about this episode. And if you like it, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, because I have many, many amazing guests, like Dr. Nondumiso. Okay. So as always, like I said, I thank you all for being, listeners of this podcast. And I thank you, Dr. Nondumiso. I appreciate you. And, you all go out there and see people, connect with people, take this work and integrate it into your daily life. That's your homework. I like to give homework. And until the next time I see you, stay empowered.
Thank you for joining me on today's episode. We truly appreciate our listeners because without you, there is no podcast. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode and that it gave you fresh insights and practical tools to elevate your communication and build trust and safety in all areas of your life, from leading your teams to strengthening your relationships at home. If today's conversation resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, share this episode, and leave us a 5-star review. Your support helps us reach more people looking to enhance their relationships, their leadership, and the communication in every area of their life. If you are ready to take your communication to the next level, I encourage you to check out our Communication That Transforms online course. This course dives deep into creating psychological safety, mastering trauma-informed communication that allows you to build behavioral flexibility and tackle any circumstance in your life. You'll learn practical strategies for handling difficult conversations, navigating conflict, and cultivating trust in a way that truly resonates with the people around you and leaves them feeling seen, heard, respected, valued, and welcome. This course is designed to help you transform not only how you lead, but how you show up in all your relationships, whether in the boardroom with your teams or at home with your family. Check out the course at mindremappingacademy.com/TICC to learn more, see the full course catalog, and register. This link will also be in the show notes. That's www.mindremappingacademy.com/TICC. Finally, if these topics resonate with you and you want to bring them to your department, your team, or your organization, I'd love to speak with you. Reach out to me and invite me in for a workshop or a conference tailored to elevate your organization's trust, collaboration, communication, safety, and belonging. You can learn more and reach out to me by visiting mindremappingacademy.com/corporate-programs. Remember, change happens one intentional conversation at a time. With one small shift in how we connect, listen, and lead. Keep listening with intention and communicating with clarity. And until the next episode, stay empowered.